It's an exciting time to be exploring the man that was Jesus. Some now say absolute myth. Some have even said he's a mushroom. There's the canonical gospels, there's the non-canonical gospels. It's fascinating. So this video absolutely digs into a broad spectrum of the possibilities of who was the man, because if he didn't exist, why are we still talking about him today? And is that really all down to the Roman Catholic Church? Reverend Grace here. Boy, this is a monster of a video. This is the thing about Jesus, just in trying to examine the possibilities, the stories, everything, the research about this one man, Jesus, Jhoshua Benjamin. It just opens up so much, it's crazy. And so this is trying to deal with so many huge topics. Yeah, it's not always easy to keep it that short, but yeah, hopefully you really enjoy this video and you get something out of it, because it's packed with stuff, and I'm actually going to have to break it down and do separate videos looking in more detail into some of these books that I'm going to share with you today. So starting off with what we think we know. So most of us, especially in the UK, America, Australia, countries like that, even great parts of Africa and India, and we have grown up as believers or non-believers with the story of the New Testament, which is really like numerous books, but anyway, some of them have the narrative of this like wonderful nativity play that we all start off with, which we all did in primary school. And it was literally like my proudest day when my daughter got to be Mary. We did rock nativity at my school, and that was fantastic. And I was Balthazar, the king, and we had microphones and everything. It was like, yeah, it was great. Well, we all know the story, don't we? But there are some things that people have been digging into. One of them is, and I don't know if it's in this book, I haven't read right through, but I remember seeing a video that Delores Canon did. God rest her soul. She is no longer with us. This is one of the books. She did a lot of past life regression, and she always said she classed herself as like a reporter. So she would regress the people that came to work with her, and she had a lot of stuff coming through people. There was all kinds of things, not Nostradamus, but there was a lot about Jesus and the Essenes, and these people were speaking freely in this like hypnotic state, going back into past lives when they were alongside or met Jesus. There was a video that she did, and I cannot find it for love nor money on YouTube now, but it was talking about and I guess maybe it is in this book and I should read it. Let's have a look. Star of Bethlehem 195. So in chapter 18, the conversation, so it's a young lady, Katie, and it was somebody back in the time before Jesus, just before Jesus was about to be born, and he's called Suddi, S-U-D-D-I, and he's the one that's coming through to Katie in regression. So she's speaking, but it's him coming through, and Delores is asking questions. And she says here that there's been discussion and controversy about the Star of Bethlehem. Many think it never existed, that it was merely a myth or legend. Others think it may have been an extremely rare conjunction of stars or planets. A conjunction occurs when two or more planets happen to cross paths in the sky and appear from our vantage point on Earth to be merged into one great star. This has occurred many times throughout history, but rarely of magnitude described in the Bible. According to Werner Keller, in his book The Bible as History, many experts place the occurrence in 7 BC, when the conjunction of Saturn and Jupiter was observed in the constellation of Pisces. Chinese records also refer to a bright nova, a sudden burst of light from a distant exploding star that may take millions of years to reach us, being seen in 6 BC. She goes on to say there are also old records of bright comets appearing about this time in the Mediterranean area. Halley's Comet, for example, visited in 12 BC. Many of the explanations have been presented even that the star was really an alien spaceship. It goes on to say that. So then she starts getting into conversation with Sudi, and Sudi's talking about being up on the hill with his dad, and they are seeing it at the point where the four are coming together because, you know, there's no street lights. It's back in the day. They did a lot of stargazing, and they're seeing it over time. And he's saying that it is written in the prophecy that when those stars come together, that is where he's going to be born. He's even naming Bethlehem. Now, there's some people that say that, oh, this is nonsense and they wouldn't have been at Bethlehem and all the rest of it. Lots of scholars and different theologians, or not theologians, the scholars, biblical scholars, or maybe they are theologians, they are saying, oh, you know, that it probably wasn't born in Bethlehem and all this sort of thing. But he actually knows it. Now, you could say that this is like another part of her brain speaking through and from what she knows as the Bible, but the way it's, you know, the answers coming out, and this is literally recorded verbatim, word for word. So then in another conversation on a different day, they are talking about a time when Sudi went to Nazareth to visit his cousins. And again, Delores is starting to ask him questions. And he's talking about, they met the family with young Jesus. He came when Herod wanted to kill all the babies. They'd come to their village and to gather things so that they were safe to go on their way to go into Egypt. Anyway, it goes on, and she's now asking him about the Magi coming. And he says an interesting thing here. She says, some people have said it may have been a strange star that had never been seen in the heavens, referring to the possible nova. It was not, and the Sudi says, it was not one that was created in that instance. For that, no. There are many who try to explain it in many different manners. They try to say that it was a warning of the gods that Rome was about to fall, that it was a comet. It is said that there were points of light where the heavens opened up and shone through. They have many explanations for it, but it was God showing that this was his son and giving us the way to know. There are many people who said that these things are impossible and all things are impossible without faith. But when one believes, all things are possible. I cannot doubt it, for I saw it with my own eyes. All I know is that when it came together, that the light was great enough to cast shadows, and it was strong enough that you could not sit and stare at it for any length of time. It was something that had never, in no memory of man, ever occurred before. Who am I to judge God's way of doing things? The wise men, it is said that there was possibly a fourth. It is said that each of the wise men followed one of the stars, and at this point they met together. And she said, oh, do you mean that they did not meet each other until they were in the area of Bethlehem? And Sudi says, it was at least within a short travelling distance. Almost when the stars came together, the Magi met, all coming from directions, and it is said that one of them never made it, for there was one for each star. So the thing about this is that it's, you could say, oh, it's a thing in her subconscious, but actually Delores Canon, in this regression process, interviewed a lot of people over expansive number of years, and she learned a lot, and she always considered herself as a reporter. She wasn't a channel, she wasn't the one, she's just asking the questions. She's not any sort of like psychic reader or anything. She just literally had a technique to get them into this state, and then asked them questions when she realised that she'd got into somebody from the past speaking to her. And the Talmud of Jmmanuel book has something to say on the Star of Bethlehem in the nativity scene. The Star of Bethlehem in the Talmud of Jmmanuel is the strong light with the long tail, which as a UFO would be understandable as an ET means of actually pointing the way of the wise men, the Magi, in pointing down to the particular stable. No star or combination of planets or comet or supernova can pinpoint any particular location on the Earth. All such astronomical bodies appear to move across the sky only very slowly at night as the Earth rotates. And also it comes on now to the escape of Jesus and Mary and the baby into Egypt is done with the guidance of the celestial son Gabriel and his travelling light, which the reader will have no trouble identifying with a present-day UFO. Gabriel is explained as being Jmmanuel's biological father. This is not the first time that a statement like this has been made. For example, in the Letter of the Apostles, another Gnostic text, there is a description that comes close. Christ came down through the various heavenly spheres and entered into Mary in the guise of the angel Gabriel. Although Gabriel is a Pleiadian ET, he was genetically about the same, evidently, as a Homo sapiens sapiens and as the Son of God referred to in Genesis. Genetic compatibility between this ET and the Earth woman Mary would imply similar compatibility in earlier times. This is what Myers' contact notes speak of, and what the Old Testament verses in Genesis 6, verses 2 to 6 suggest. Myers' contact notes actually state that Earth's present races are linked to Pleiadian history. So, light conception or physical conception with Gabriel, but it's Gabriel that brings it as the messenger. See, this is the thing, isn't it? Because this says one thing, the canonical gospel said another. Again, it's picking out the seed of truth, and that is can only be what has a sense of being right for you, because, well, because you can boggle your brain with all the different people's understandings of it all, and their deciphering and their interpreting and their, not just of what they're reading, but their interpretation from Aramaic and Greek and Hebrew into English or via other languages and then into English. Oh yeah, it's the minefield. Some of you might think, when you've got the likes of Paul Wallis, who I'm always banging on about Paul, bless him, he's just works hard at his craft. I think he just has a lot of people he speaks to. He gathers a lot of evidence. He really does his research and his study, and I think he really uses a deeper inner knowing and sense of intuition as well. But he talks about the ETs in the Bible and the connection there, and he showed a picture. I should put it up. So now we're already getting into ETs and people being regressed, and you're thinking, crikey, you're trying to argue that the Bible's real. And you're bringing up this sort of nonsense. Well, yeah, maybe. But there's a lot of crazy stuff that happens in the Bible, but I don't think it was, it's a bit of a mishmash, isn't it? I'm coming around to the Bible. We'll come to the Bible another time. Because there are people that absolutely take the gospel as gospel, and everything in it is absolutely historically correct. And that is, especially in the New Testament, because there is also the thing, you see, that your Matthew, Mark, Luke and John, they are said to be kind of like different split offs from the Jesus faith, the way, or Jesus believers at the time. This is like way before Roman Catholic Church. And then you get your Paul as well on top of that, but there are some books of his letters in there that people say, well, that's not written by him, so who's that written by and why has it ended up in the Bible? So there's already some sort of unsurety about some of that. There's also potentially, some would say, some of those things in your Matthew, Mark, Luke and John, they have been tampered with, potentially for the benefit when the Roman Catholic Church did come to be, that even Paul's work apparently was distorted, or some things were slightly changed. And you've also got people along the way misinterpreting or mistranslating, or in the interpretation of the preaching that has come since. And Paul seems to be putting things into Jesus's mouth that others would absolutely say this is stuff that he wouldn't have said. He didn't say this and he didn't do that. And then you've got things like, where is it? The secret teachings, the secret sayings of Jesus, the Gospel of Thomas, which was found in the Nag Hammadi library, so classed as a Gnostic text, whatever you want that to mean, because, yeah, there seems to be many different understandings or beliefs about that. But this is a really old book. But yeah, according to the Gospel of Thomas, and it's just a load of sayings, and there's Thomas Didymus, which I think Didymus means twin, so they're saying that potentially Jesus had a twin. And of course there's other be like, well, of course they can't have a twin, it was just him and he was God. And yeah, this is obviously the wranglings that we all know people get into, but some would say that they are the truest teachings, and in fact put Delores Canon pretty close on that in terms of almost in terms of historical reference. Yeah, that's a minefield in itself. What is missing from the Bible? Well, for starters, there's like from the age of 12, when he was in the temple and he was telling them all, you know, arguing with them and pointing out how he thought the law was and what he thought scripture said and what God was really saying. And they're like, you're only 12. How come you're here? Like, you know so much. Half fascinated and probably half a little bit annoyed by a petulant child that appeared to know everything. In terms of his Jewish scripture, he absolutely did, either by study or by, you know, direct line from God, his father, apparent father. And then to the age of, you know, when he came back for his ministry, rocking around 30. Crikey, that's all the exciting years gone. And when I was a kid, I was the one at school going, excuse me, Mr. Cruz. He was our divinity teacher, is basically RE, religious studies. And I said, oh, you know, where was Jesus between all this time? Oh no, we're not doing that today. Don't, you know, shush now. Yeah. They didn't like asking questions like that because nobody really knew, I suppose. Or maybe they had their own beliefs. I guess maybe people were making it up. Or were they really that going by the church and what was being told in the church that they never questioned it? Surely not. I certainly questioned it. And yeah, I think this one about the life and works in India, I'm thinking that is actually after he's resurrected. I mean, again, woohoo, we're going right off the scale there, but there's another one, Jesus in India, and I think this book, so Life and Works of Jesus in India, like I say, I think that's following his resurrection. Oh no, so this book, this presents a fascinating account of the years Jesus believed to have spent in India as a young man. And this one as well. This is the English version of an Urdu treatise written by the holy founder of the Ahmadiyya movement in Islam. So coming from different ends of the thing there. And then we have, this book is not written by him, but Man or Myth. So this is written by Professor E.M. Blakelock, who I'm pretty sure is mentioned by Dr. Richard Carrier, who does a lot of videos now on and talks and presentations and things on Jesus being completely mythical. And what is it? I've written down something that he said. We don't have any secular evidence that supports the existence of Jesus, you know, in the sense of historicity. It all comes from myth. He's quite brutal about that. And yet to me, just think, myth. I know it's hard when you've been brought up all your childhood with the Bible stories and you've just not had anything else brought onto your radar of knowing or understanding. I find myself just thinking, and yet there's just so, you know, this guy is really hanging around like a bad smell. Like, how are we all still talking about him today? Is that because the Roman Catholic Church became such a power and Christianity's burst everywhere? And even though lots of people now don't go to church and our society in religious ways is changing, here we are actually with a like backfilling, nature bores a vacuum, this almost backfilling of all this stuff that's coming through Delores Canon, your Paul Wallis's, what's he called? Father Sean O'Leary. Oh God. Sorry, Father Sean, if I've said your name wrong. I now offended you with a completely bad Irish accent. Okay, shush. Yeah, there's just too much coming through with new interpretations or new understandings. And actually, what are we left with if the Bible's not true? Jesus is actually a myth. There's the Gnostic Gospels, a brilliant book or person that does great study and talks about this, Elaine Pagels. You're definitely non-canonical stuff. And then you've got like your Gospel of Mary as well. Now, Gospel of Mary, I have to get this book out because the wonderful Megan Waterson has given me the answer to this question in her wonderful book. I'm sure most of you have seen this book. If you haven't, get it. It's fascinating. The earliest evidence of the lost Gospel of Mary Magdalene was discovered in January 1896 at an antiquities market in Cairo by a German scholar named Karl Reinhardt. It was written in Coptic on ancient papyrus. Coptic is an Egyptian language that is still used today by Egyptian Christians called Copts. So it was placed in the Egyptian Museum in Berlin with the official title and catalogue number of Codex Berlinensis 8502, which is a mouthful, so scholars refer to it as the Berlin Codex. And a lot more study, especially by Megan, has been done into that. And this is the thing, you see, was the myth just building and building and building, that this is like some kind of fan writing, that you know, there was these Jesus stories and it was all, you know, built up and everyone was in different camps. You had your John, your Jonine camp, you had your Peter, your Petros camp, you had your Luke's, and everyone in their own little areas with their own beliefs of building up, which I guess you could say is myth building. But where is that myth started from? I have such a struggle with people just passing stuff off as myth and just going, meh, myth. It's like that instantly makes it some kind of fairy story. I just think in myth, it's either really strong archetypes, which is our kind of human nature function kind of side of things, or actually it's just based on some remnants of truth. And when, you know, I say remnants of truth, you can think, oh, well, much of the Bible can't be true then if it's all just yeah, but it's a really, these things are like really key things. It's not just like the Easter Bunny kind of a myth. I mean, the Easter Bunny's actually come out of the Astrans or Austrians, but anyway, that's a whole other thing. But this, it's not like fairy, it's not a fairy story. The Bible, there's more to it than meets the eye. And there's just too many things afterwards. Apparitions of Mary, Mother of Jesus. Why would she be appearing on the earth? And lots of people, why would that be just such an important thing if Jesus wasn't this important guy of whatever thing, God, enlightened man, ascended master? I just think, yeah, why would she be important? Why would Mary Magdalene afterwards? This just, you know, as I was trying to say, she's just become like the next fanzine writing. But these are things that have been written down. They're really sacred texts. They're things that people wanted to hide and save and make sure that future generations could read this stuff. And the Nag Hammadi library that's appeared, you know, in 1945, funnily enough, end of the war, and things like this are coming out into our realm of knowledge and understanding. It's taken years for people to translate it and decipher it and study it. But now, you know, in the last few decades, and especially now, more and more is coming to light. It's fantastic. So, discounting all of that, he says there's no secular evidence. Now that brings me to another book here. So this brings me to the Drama of the Lost Disciples. Now, really annoyingly, I cannot find a very important book that I'm studying at the minute, and this book is based on the, now her name is going to be back on here, Gladys Taylor. His work in this book, a lot of it is based on work done by Gladys Taylor, and Gladys Taylor also wrote, oh no, she refers to, now this one I haven't read yet, started with this one, and this book, funnily enough, was mentioned by Delores Canon. And also weirdly, it's written by George F. Jowett, and yes, this is Glastonbury Abbey. And Jowett is a really uncommon name. My granny's cousin, first cousin, was called Jowett. Can't be many Jowetts in the world. It's the only time in my life that I've heard that name again. Anyway, now this book, which has come from Gladys Taylor's book, which she is referring to the coming of the saints, J.W. Taylor. So I'm guessing maybe it's a relative or just a coincidence. But anyway, this book's from like 1924 or something. Anyway, this book is talking about when what happened after the crucifixion and the resurrection, as it is written, and well, it's centering really, from what I've read so far. My reading is so slow, it's taken me ages to get through this because I got pretty much halfway through, and then my book of the Gladys Taylor arrived and I started going through that. Anyway, can't find it. This is centres on Joseph of Arimathea and the Marys and the Bethany family coming to Glastonbury, up through Gaul, through what is now France. Now again, the way this is, and this is citing all kinds of documents. Documents by, now is it Bede, who is recognised as our first major historian in, let me see if there's a thing. He was the first proper historian, yes, 180. Venerable Bede, he lived AD 673 to 735, so quite a way after Jesus' life. But the full facts concerning this amazing incident are related by the Venerable Bede in his Ecclesiastical History of the English Nation. Learned Britain historian Bede was held in high esteem by both the British and the Roman Catholic Church, while he was a sincere advocate of the novel papal faith introduced by St. Augustine, AD 596. He was dogged in his support of the British Church and to its claim of priority in establishing the Christian faith first in Britain, a fact not disputed by St. Augustine nor by Pope Gregory at Rome. Bede is recorded as the father of English learning, being the first to translate the New Testament into English. All Christians are familiar with the beautiful story of Bede translating the last chapter to his scribe as he lay dying in his barren cell, expiring within a few minutes after concluding the last verse in the Gospel of John, reciting the Gloria. That is him. And yes, you heard right, the Christian Church was very first formed in Britain, in Glastonbury. Now, the Gladys Taylor book and this book both talk about the genealogy that now can be traced by modern day scientists, didn't know this before, that the people that settled up in Britain, an island, what is now Ireland, they are actually from the lost tribes. So there was the 12 tribes, but only 2 ended up there and the others all dispersed. And of course this is happening, migration over a long period of time. And then there was the Druids, and the Druids had the same sort of patriarchal thing as the ancient, what we would call now Hebrews. They would they have been Chaldeans? They definitely, I think they would have been Judeans. But anyway, they were different name from different time. This is, over a fair long time in history, period in history. But the books argue that it's the case that when Joseph of Arimathea and Mary and everyone arrived, now Jesus had already come here with Joseph of Arimathea. He was supposed to have built a chapel to his mum, Now, this could be the one that Joseph built afterwards, or it could be the one that Jesus built. And again, there are things in here, people like St. David, and he went to Glastonbury and he saw the chapel that's supposedly built by Jesus. And there's a quote in here where he's saying, you know, it doesn't look, basically saying it doesn't look like it's built by human hands. This is like, you know, godly intervention sort of a thing. I mean, it might just look like a hut to you, but there was something about the place. And I guess he's probably not talking about structure. He's probably talking about the feeling when you go in the place. Now, I have to say that when I went on the pilgrimage, I haven't done a video about it yet. I need to do that. When I went on the Marian pilgrimage that happens every year, and it was last month, and I managed to get there for the first time and get to the Abbey for the first time. And we went down into the crypt bit of this original part where Mary's chapel was. And oh, wow, the feeling in there. But anyway, I saved that one for another video because that was quite something. When Joseph, Arimathea, Mary and everyone, they were so open to this change to Christianity. They'd already met Jesus. They'd already been in the presence of this man that was so special. And it was with the way the Druid faith was, and actually what Jesus's teachings and how, see, the church was just people. It wasn't a church. And so the people that were followers of Jesus, of the way, back then, as it was called, it really married nicely with the Druids. But that was kind of, they're arguing it's kind of expected because they'd already come, you know, they were the lost tribes. Anyway, we need to dig into this book a lot more and do an actual video on it, because I'm trying to cover a lot of stuff here and I can't waffle on about this for ages. So we'll come back to the real detail of that because it is fascinating. The whole point is, this is long before Roman Catholic Church and it had its spread across the world and its empire and its power. If there was no Jesus, where would all this stuff be coming from? Why would Joseph of Arimathea and the Bethany family be travelling, as the legend in the south of France is well known and in the very much present day awareness of people in that area, of this boat that came in with no oars, and Mary Magdalene was in it, and they'd all come over straight away after the, you know, not long after the crucifixion and the resurrection, and the power, the spiritual energy that must have come off them, and they you know, it's spoken about today. And then they travelled up through, and then they entered into Glastonbury, and then they met up with the Druids. They were given hides of land at Glastonbury, 12 hides of land. They were, it was in the Doomsday Book that these 12 hides of land were still tax-free. And yeah, there are different kinds of records proving this journey and these people come here. But if there was no Jesus, and if none of this would happen, why would they be doing it? And if there was a Jesus and he was just kind of a mediocre bloke, there's something more to it. There's something more to it. Now, my eyes have been drawn to it again. Now, this is frustrating as well because I cannot find my Talmud of Jmmanuel book. But what I have got recently is Celestial Teaching, James W. Deardoff, The Emergence of the True Testament of Jmmanuel, Jesus in brackets. Celestial Teachings explores and analyses a document called the Talmud of Jmmanuel. It was discovered in 1963 after being buried and encased in resin for nearly 2,000 years. The discoverer was assassinated and the document was burned. Fortunately, a significant portion of it had already been translated and put into safe hands with a guy called Billy Meier in Switzerland. And Billy Meier, if you've heard of him, he is the guy who has documented, and there are videos about him, he was able to photograph alien spaceships, UFOs, whatever you want to call them, that came to his land, and he had connection and correspondence with 2 or 3 over years, ETs basically. And there are people that have studied the photographs and they've just said they're just not fake. This guy, he was a recognized, you know, a well-respected scientist, lots of peer-reviewed papers to his name, and never in a million years did he think he was going to suddenly start going off and studying UFOs. And then through that he came to Billy Meier and he came to the Talmud of Jmmanuel, and when he started learning about that, he realised that that text really needed. It's important, and it really needs further investigation. And he dedicated many years to this, and this is the book that gives the arguments and the discussions. This guy really, I mean, he goes right into it. But to give you some sort of an understanding of how the canonical gospel of Matthew differs, this is one of the points that is looked at. It's the 40 days and 40 nights. So Matthew 4, Satan tempts Jesus. Then Jesus was led up by the Spirit into the wilderness to be tempted by the devil. And when he had fasted 40 days and 40 nights afterward, he was hungry. Now when the tempter came to him, he said, "If you are the Son of God, command that these stones become bread." But he answered and said, "It is written, man shall not live on bread alone." Anyway, so he goes through his temptations. And then at the end of that section, verse 11 of chapter 4, then the devil left him, and behold, angels came and ministered to him. And that section in the Talmud of Jmmanuel is, numbers are slightly different. It's chapter 3, what would be chapter 3, verses 33 to chapter 4, 51. Behold, after these words, Jmmanuel entered into the metallic light. So this is talking about exactly the same section. The devil's taken off into the wilderness, but Talmud of Jmmanuel is saying, after these words, Jmmanuel entered into the metallic light, which climbed into the sky, surrounded by fire and smoke, and passed over the lifeless sea, as the singing of the metallic light soon faded away. After that, Jmmanuel was no longer seen for 40 days and 40 nights. Thus they spoke, the celestial sons between the north and the west, before they took Jmmanuel in the metallic light back to Israel, to the land of Galilee. Very different story. It's an interesting thing because you can think, aliens and all the rest of it, absolute load of nonsense. But there's a passage in here that I'll read to you because I think we all know that there has just been more and more and more videos and evidence, and from things like American Air Navy guys, taking footage of weird lights going into the ocean. And I touch on this in my other videos. The whole thing is just amazing. But anyway, the scientific method requires multiple witnesses, with at least some of them being scientists, and requires, because they've got more authority than God now, obviously, and requires that even more hard evidence be obtained upon demand. There are some 24 secondary witnesses in the case. A few of them have cited the Palladian UFOs before, after Meyer went out on a contact session, while others have attested to occult phenomenon directly related to his contact sessions. Yet Meyer remains the primary witness in this case. Only he was allowed to meet some of the Palladians, to talk with them and photograph their UFO beam ships, as Semjase called them. Semjase is, I think, the second contact or the third contact that he has over the years of his life coming to him. The Palladians seem to have a purposeful two-sided strategy of covertness. On the one hand, they and other ETs are gradually leaking information about their presence, capabilities and motivations through purposefully allowed UFO sightings and contactee messages. On the other hand, they seem to be doing this in a manner that will keep most UFO non-believers deluded, in order that mankind not be shocked into any sudden realization of their presence before being much better prepared for it mentally. Those without open minds assume from the outset that the contactee case must be a hoax or hallucination, and are not prepared to allow for the possibility that any advanced ETs in our vicinity would be intelligent enough to have a strategy of dealing with us. These UFO opponents, through use of ridicule and claims of scientific support, largely control the news media and governmental bodies with respect to those interpretations of the UFO phenomenon. The UFO sightings, which have been reported in abundance since 1947, demonstrate such an ET strategy. Through these, the existence of UFOs as technological objects and some of their capabilities of speed, manoeuvrability and vanishing or reappearing have become known to over half the world's population, according to various polls. Yet another, in over 100,000 screened cases on record, has enough firm evidence been left behind to convince the closed-minded that any one case is genuine beyond a reasonable doubt. The more seemingly bizarre is the phenomenon, the more evidence is required before it can be tentatively accepted scientifically. If no one case is absolutely certain to have occurred, all cases are questionable. As long as no more than one person out of about 20 admits to being a UFO witness, they can all be pronounced mistaken, misinformed, or fraudulent. So it's interesting because they're really credible people. Paul Wallis, Mauro Baglino, doing their work, Paul on Fifth Kind TV, and you'll see Mauro, the ancient Hebrew translator, on there. There are so many different people talking about this, and how, especially the Old Testament part of the Bible with the Elohim, and talking about, so in this same way, here it says, behold, after these words, Jmmanuel entered into the metallic light, which climbed into the sky, surrounded by fire and smoke. That is the same as things in Old Testament with Moses, when he met God. Yeah. It can all seem very bizarre, but hang on a minute. Actually, it can seem very bizarre, but this book, Celestial Teachings by James W. Deardoff, actually says in, I don't know, the second page, dedicated to those who seek after the truth, no matter how strange it may seem at first. And this is the thing, isn't it? Something that can seem, we say this thing, or it can seem so alien to us. And yeah, it can, but doesn't mean it's not necessary, doesn't mean there's a seed of truth, or that it is actually the truth. The Bible is trying to tell us a lot more than we think, or that we've been led to believe. That's for sure. Then I come to this beautiful book, The Hidden Gospel, by Neil Douglas Klotz. And he is basically taken the Aramaic, the only Aramaic text that he can find, which I think is a Syrian one, and he is translating Jesus's teachings from Aramaic into English. And it, again, a little bit like the Talmud of Jmmanuel, it doesn't quite come up as the same. And what it comes up as is something far more cosmic sort of sounding language. So, for example, Neil gives an alternative reading of Matthew 5, verse 3 from the Aramaic, which in the King James Bible is, "Blessed are the poor in spirit, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven." And his translation is, "Ripe are those who reside in breath, to them belongs the reign of unity. Blessed are those who realise that breath is the first and last possession. Theirs is the I can of the cosmos." So without going into, I mean, again, this is a whole nother book that probably I should dig into in a separate video. This is literally going to be like a mammoth video, but yeah, it just is a far more cosmic sort of speaking language when he's translating these things from Aramaic. It's far more this, you know, off-planet kind of a thing, as much as speaking about what's happening on this planet. So this has come from the Aramaic version. So whether that means it's more original or older, and the Greek text, or whether the Greek lot were written, but they've all come from some original source. And yeah, the language in there is far more planets and space and us being part of the stars and all that sort of a thing. It seems to be pointing to more of an understanding of some kind of inner world in us, and the inner world is yeah, it's the outer, but the outer is like cosmic. There's another book that I've got, and again, can't quite put my hand on it today, but it's about Greek gematria, and Jesus has many names, and so there's Jesus, and people are saying, oh well, that's Jesus, and you know, it's just come from like a Greek thing. And so Jesus's name, why did he have so many names? So Jesus and his mates, they spoke Aramaic, but there was a lot of Greek Greek was spoken predominantly in their area. And in Greek, when they were writing their biblical texts, which I guess they didn't know then were going to be biblical, but they had this thing, gematria, so kind of like a numerology thing. And when they were, in a book that I cannot find for the life of me, these books keep disappearing, I don't know what's going on, it's like the book fairies are in my house, but there was a book and it said about the fact that Jesus was the number, his name, so each letter is assigned a number, and so Jesus, the letters to the numbers comes to 888, so that is symbolising new beginnings, fullness, perfection, also like victory over evil, and the powerful symbol of resurrection. So going back to the celestial teachings, it's the chapter on the general nature of the candidate for Proto-Matthew, the name of the document. It's very titled Talmud of Jmmanuel contains two surprises. First, the reader may be accustomed to Talmud, meaning the well-known collection of Jewish law and teachings set into writing around 400 AD. However, the Aramaic word Talmud long predates the 5th century. Its original meaning is a collection of teachings gathered by one or more disciples. Second, the name Jesus does not appear in the title nor in the Talmud of Jmmanuel. Rather, we find Jmmanuel, which represents the name Emmanuel. According to Edward Mayer, the substitution of J for I in Emmanuel dates back to the preference of Jmmanuel himself after he learnt that in an ancient language of the Pleiadians, who orchestrated his presence and mission on earth, the symbol J stood for R, I, J and Y sounds. The appearance of Emmanuel in the Aramaic language is shown below in the left, and the appearance of Jmmanuel on the right. So this is Jmmanuel and this is Emmanuel. Is that right? Now, I can't remember if, like in Arabic, you read this backwards, but you can see the only difference is, although that looks very much like just a J, but anyway, it doesn't look like Hebrew text. Now, it is known that the name Jesus is an abbreviated form of the Old Hebrew Yeshua, meaning Yahweh saves, God saves, and does not have an Aramaic derivation. The Hebrew name Joshua is a form of this. On the other hand, the original name Jmmanuel was prophesied to be given according to the citation from Isaiah appearing in Matthew 1:23, is Emmanuel or Emmanuel, which means God with us, and is Aramaic. From an open-minded viewpoint, one may then question how the name Jesus, rather than Emmanuel, came to appear in Matthew 1:21, since the Hebrew language was not in vernacular use even at that time. An Aramaic name would have been more natural. More importantly, why would the compiler of Matthew have said in Matthew 1:22 that what Isaiah had prophesied, that his name would be Emmanuel, had been fulfilled, if 2 verses earlier an angel appeared to Joseph, supposedly in a dream, to tell him that the infant's name should be Jesus? The Talmud of Jmmanuel thus forces us to ask if something is not wrong here. Perhaps Jmmanuel actually was known in his own time not as Jesus but as Emmanuel, with the angel's statement saying his name would be Jesus being an editorial insert. If so, it is Paul who seems, so Paul as in, the letters of Paul, who seems most likely to have first given Jmmanuel the name Jesus, because he is the one who attains a position of sufficient influence to make such a change stick. As motivation, the meaning of Jesus well fits Paul's redemption theology and emphasis of man's sinfulness. God with us, which is the meaning of Emmanuel, just does not touch upon this main theme of Paul, while God saves, which is the Jesus name, it does, since it is shorthand for God saves us from our sins. By referring to him as Jesus, or much more often as Jesus Christ, Paul would not only have been making his theological viewpoint easier for others to understand, certainly not committing any sin from his own perspective. So yeah, after Paul's epistles appeared in mid-1st century, any later writings about Jmmanuel would then likely have been altered into writings about Jesus. Now, whether that's correct or not, Paul certainly went off on his own thing of what he said Jesus's messages were, when actually, there's lots of people doing interesting work that will show you that that's absolutely not what was said. Then there's another guy, it's John Davis. Is it John Davis? Yeah, I think it's John Davis. And he is a guy who had a past life regression, didn't believe in, I don't think he initially believed in all of this stuff. And he had a past life regression, and it turns out that he was a guy who was with Jesus when he was very young. And I can't remember what sort of a role. It wasn't a friend. It was, anyway, whatever it was. And he knew him as Jhoshua Benjamin. And so there's lots of different things about what his name is, but basically a lot of people that don't call him Jesus would call him Yeshua. And Yeshua, I think it's I don't know, I'm not sure there's right or wrong. I tend to say Jhoshua or Yeshua. And again, it's the conditioning that, I suppose it's the thing, any who gather in my name, and I shall be with you. And you think, crikey, I hope you get your name right. And then there's Isa, and where is the book? Here it is. The Nicholas Notovich book. This is where it talks about his name. He was known, and also actually writers in India, in the Puranas, they are talking about Isa, this Saint Isa. So yeah, he's had different names, and I kind of think that's a testimony to how this guy, this Jesus bloke, this Isa, Jhoshua, Emmanuel, how he got about the place. And people, he was known across a broad area. People weren't, you get this thing like, oh, he was just a carpenter's son and he stayed in Nazareth and all his life, apart from when he went to Egypt. That really doesn't seem to be coming up as showing to be true now. This guy, either by bilocation or teleportation or UFO things or walking there or taking the donkey, he got about the place, and he was well known. And each area with their own culture and language came to have their own name for him, which I just think says a lot in itself. As you can see, I'm drowning in books here. And I can't read them all, and I can't find them all. So annoying. Anyway, there's lots of things that, it all gets, people think it's all a bit fairy story and mythical, or just damn right tin hat wearing weird. There's the Immaculate Conception, and people say, well, that's got to be the bit that they've just added on in down the line. And we just can't know. Do you know what? It's like we're only going by what we've found. in terms of scripture and texts and codex and documents. Who's to say there's not others? And because they're all a bit different, is that just because they're from different areas, or is, you know, each one got a little bit of the truth? Somebody said the other day that I heard, and they said, put all those books of the Bible, all old and new, together, and you've got something really rich. And it is. I've got this thing about the living word. And to me, the Bible is the living word in the sense that people are getting, you can only have your own perception, your own understanding, and God made you that way. You're all, that's part of your purpose in life, is to all be different. Consciousness experience in itself, if we were all the same, it would just be like, where, and nothing would progress and develop and learn, and things can come out of apparent conflict. So, you know, all of that. Anyway, the thing about Immaculate Conception is then there's this thing called, oh, that's my toast plate. Oh, finally found it. The mystery tradition of miraculous conception, Mary and the lineage of births. Now, actually, I got this from a brilliant bookshop in London when I went up for a tarot exhibition. Haven't read it. It looks very clean and new. Haven't read it at all. But this is not an unknown thing. And there's also a book which is written as a novel, but it's based on things that she's, I don't know if she would say that she's channeled it. I'm going to have to find the thing. It's called Anna, and it's basically, that is Jesus's grandmother. And she talks in there about light conception. And yeah, it sounds all like a very real thing, but probably most of you think like, oh, absolute nonsense. But again, there is something, there's some seed of truth. There's a thing that keeps coming back. And in our very real material world minds, just like, no, don't be ridiculous. But and then someone else said, oh, there's no way that she could have conceived of the Holy Spirit, because she, Holy Spirit is a she, and a she can't make a she pregnant. It's light conception. So I'm going to say, if that's true, then yeah, a woman can make a woman pregnant, because it's not a woman in the sense that we think it's a woman. It's something we have assigned to be female, or more female than a male aspect. Just saying. What else do we have? The Shroud of Turin. So the Shroud of Turin is just the most fascinating thing. So in the Billy Meyer case, where in James Deardoff's book, and it's talking about how, you know, he's got this photographic evidence of these alien contactees. There is no, the document was burnt in a fire in a refugee camp, of the actual text of the Talmud of Jmmanuel. So there isn't a physical one. There's only the translation copy that Billy Meyer holds. So you have this physical evidence, but it's very easily poo-pooed. And the same with the Shroud of Turin. It's a material, physical thing. We've really got it. But so many are like, oh no, it's just absolutely can't be real. And it was the, what's it called? Carbon dating. That was done on it in 1988, and the answers came up that it was from the 1200s, so medieval, and or Middle Ages, and so, you know, they're just like, well, this completely disproves it, obviously. But there's a video I watched recently, Bob Rucker. Now, Bob Rucker is a guy who is a nuclear analyst. That's what he's done for his job all his life, working in the nuclear field. And he wanted to bring his nuclear knowledge to bear on the Shroud of Turin. The Shroud of Turin. The Shroud of Turin. And he talks in this video, I'll put the thing of the video and the channel in here because I can't remember what it was. But he was talking about how when it was first photographed by an Italian guy who I think was an architect or something, but he was also an amateur photographer. And he went to an exhibition back in 1898 where the shroud was fully on display. And he took photos of it. And when he produced the negatives in his darkroom, he found that in the negative form, it was a positive image. And that immediately, like, you know, awoke him to like, oh, this isn't quite right. Like that's something special. Anyway, he was, I think he was ridiculed and given a really hard time about it, and it was just dismissed, even back then. But others since have done the same thing, and yeah, that's kind of inexplainable. It's not something that should be. So different types of, well, I've written it down here somewhere. So they use radiocarbon dating. Now, Bob Rucker showed that, or have found other research that showed that the shroud was being held somewhere, looked after somewhere in the 1500s, I think it was, and there was a fire, and it was in a cathedral or a church, and they managed to get it out. It may have been in Turin, wherever it was, and they managed to get it out, but there was some damage, so it was repaired, and something to do with test samples, I think, came from that bit. Anyway, I'm not sure if I've quite got that correct, but anyway, he did the nuclear run on it with his analysis of nuclear data, and he found that actually, was it then that he said that it was found in the future, it came from the future? Well, obviously that can't be right. So yeah, there's some weirdness going on here with them trying to prove how long ago it was from, and yeah, there's a weirdness already going on there. They did DNA and pollen analysis. That did show up some things. Microscopic and spectroscopic methods were used to study the nature of the image, and so this showed 3D qualities, so it wasn't just painted on, or it's not been dyed into the fabric. Forensic analysis, that showed that the stains or the marks on the cloth, that it corresponded to realistic depiction of blood flows from wounds that were consistent with crucifixion. Now, there's something else that Bob talks about medieval, oh, that's right, medieval depictions of the crucifixion. They were shown driving the nail into the middle of the hand, but that's not how it would have been done. It would have been done through the wrists. Does something to how the thumb and the fingers then go. And the Shroud of Turin, the way the form of the hand is shown, is consistent with what would physically happen if a nail, ruddy great nail, was driven through this point here. And it's something it shows the conflict that it can't be dated from the carbon dating that's trying to say it's Middle Ages, when they had the depictions in paintings and things that it went through the hand. This is why it shows that dating, it proves that to be wrong in its own right. The guys that have done the microscopic and the spectroscopic, trying to get to the nature of what forms the image, and again, Bob in his nuclear thing, he touches on this because he's talking really in depth about neutrons and all the rest, electrons and stuff, and how the image can be formed on this thing. And he's basically saying, as I've heard before about these people that use these microscopic methods, that it's like in the same way that a negative image is left on that film when a photographer uses proper original old school film in their camera. They're describing it as if a burst of light, which is photons, electrons, neutrons, whatever, is bursting forth. Now, whether this is in the point of what they would say is the resurrection, when he's, physically coming back to life, as it were, or he's, I don't know, maybe in the ET kind of thinking of it, he's being beamed up out of that physical tomb, and poof, the physical body just kind of like evaporates, and the soul, the spirit, the whatever, the energy force is going up out, and that's what's left, an emblazoned image on this cloth. It's fascinating stuff. It's getting right into an in-depth thing. But all these scientists, and I think several of them the scientists love to prove a thing, don't they? And I think probably many of them, in the same way that James had no intention of trying to prove ETs or UFOs or anything like that, he found something, there was a seed of truth there, enough for him to dedicate many, many years. He actually quit his job and retired to study the Talmud of Jmmanuel. That's a lot of dedication. That's a lot of time. Also, it's kind of like, professional with these things. But they see something that is just so right that they'll stick their neck on the line, that they'll commit years of work to looking at these things against the fear of people thinking that they're nuts or it's a load of bollocks. They do it anyway. And this is the thing, isn't it? All these revelations and all these things, it only has to start with one person. That's just how it is. That's just the way it works. And then others come on board with it because they start seeing the thing of the kernel of truth. And yet the majority are like, oh my God, they're all mad and this can't be right. Or they just don't know about it because it's just not come on their radar of knowledge. So yeah, the shroud, it's just like this physical pointer. When you hear about, bits of the cross and all the rest of it, how the blimmin' heck did they still have bits of the cross? Was Jesus already that special at the time that people thought to keep bits of the cross? But it's just weird that, the shroud is something that has come under such modern day scientific scrutiny, and those professors and scholars and scientists that thought, yeah, that can't be real and I'm going to test it. I'm going to see, oh no, it is real. It's absolutely kosher. Yeah, that must be a problem for them. Yeah, it's just fascinating. And God, I say that a lot, don't I? God, it's just fascinating. It is. Oh my word. Theologians, scholars, they talk about the earliest written records that we have of Jesus, and they all fight over, or try to agree on when those Gospels books were written. And yet it occurred to me the other day, so there's this guy, Nikolai Notovich, and he, in the end of the 1800s at some point, Russian guy, plenty of money, wanted to go adventuring, wanted to see India and everything that was down in that direction. And he went down there, and then he was or he'd either heard about it before or he was told about it when he was staying in a monastery in Tibet, I think it was. And he heard about that they had written records hidden away in their ancient library of this guy Saint Issa, and basically that's probably Jesus, and how he, in his young years, these missing years, that he travelled there. Anyway, they wouldn't show him it. He ended up breaking his leg down the mountain and being brought back and being there for a few weeks, and he ended up getting on really well with the monks in that time, and one of them got out the manuscript, the text, and read it to him and let him translated it for him and let him write it down, and he produced this cute little book. And it's fascinating. And he was dismissed as it all being nonsense, but then actually quite eminent spiritual people have been back to the monastery, and they've been shown the text. A British military officer with a clan was sent there quite near the time when he was publishing this book, and they went there, and of course they were told, oh no, we don't know what you're talking about, there's no document like that. Well, when you arrive in uniform and you're all military, you're not really going to be getting out this highly secret document. But for some spiritual leader Swami from India, you definitely you're far more likely to be getting it out. So there's been many eyes on this text, but it made me think, that is going to be probably the earliest written text that was written as a diary at the time, and it says about the first bit and then how they heard about the crucifixion. Well, I tend to think that he was written about at the time when he visited, and then they heard about it. It says about how the news came through of his crucifixion, and even if they didn't write it before, I think they definitely would write it then. So that is the early record, the same as the first church was Joseph of Arimathea and Mary and everyone going over to Glastonbury. It was it was years, and they're starting that, you know, the way, and it's not a church. They were just followers of Yeshua. So yeah, the next so that to me is written records. You've got the stuff written in India, and you've got the stuff written in Tibet that's throughout different monasteries, and it's all about St. Isa and Isa, and you know that this was Jesus because the way they write about him, that he was an advanced, enlightened, high conscious state of, you know, man that came from Judea, and that he was crucified. I mean, it's just like the details of who this Isa was just fits to exactly, and is in the right time frame. So very unlikely to be someone else. So then some say, oh, well, Jesus is actually born out of Mithras because it was the Roman Catholics that started the church, and they were very sort of Mithras followers. It was, you know, the pagan Roman god, and Constantine was really into that, and he just pretended to be Christian. Now, Constantine, his mother was Christian, and he sent her off to Jerusalem, and she was the one that decided, well, found or said that this is where he died, and this is where he was born, and this was this, and this was that, in Jerusalem, which are the places that people go to today. There was a guy, I watched a video, and he went there. I think he was a Jewish guy, and he went to Jerusalem, and he went to a place. Oh no, he wasn't. Was he Jewish? Anyway, he went to this little place that called, is it the Garden of Gethsemane? He went to it's called the Garden of something, or the Garden of the Nativity, and he said that's where he felt the real power. That's where he felt that something, the energy, that almost like blasted with flashbacks, like Wednesday in Wednesday. He did not feel anything when he was in the other places. So anyway, the sepulchre and all of that. So yeah, it wasn't Mithras because it had already happened. You had Thomas going to India, that ancient Christian church and faith and the way going on there. You had the guys in Ethiopia, the Orthodox Church there, who've got possessed the oldest Bible with the Book of the Jubilees and all the rest of it in it. That's old, like their faith there. And then you've got the British Church, the Celtic Christianity that was sprouting up out of Somerset and Devon and Cornwall, and then Wales and Ireland and Northumbria and Isle of Man and Lindisfarne, Iona, and all those places. It's not based on Mithras. You can say that. You can say, so there are things. Mithras was to do with the 25th of December, which is why we now have that as Jesus's birth. There are things that they've utilised, but that's kind of that is the human founding of the story, and what fits what they want to put out as the Roman Catholic Church to be the powerful ones or the Catholic Church to be the powerful ones that are creating the story and, you know, honing what is their church, the Council of Nicaea and all of that, forming the creed, and right, this is what we all believe and this is what we're all signing up to. And I've been stepping away from that more and more, and especially since I found out all that has come to light about Glastonbury and Jesus coming to Cornwall and to Somerset in his youth, and then his family coming over here. I'm quite happy. I still go to the church down the road, and I'm a leader of services of worship because they don't have a minister there, so they have entrusted me, and so I can't talk about these sorts of things. And I still hold a lot of what's in the New Testament to really have some element of truth. And I just think it's like I said, it's the living word. It's for each of us to have our own sense of it, and to have our own, that's only what can be right for you. Trying to have someone else's sense of it, there's going out like I do and reading the books and watching videos and lectures and talks and all the rest of it, And I find that that really helps me weigh up. I've said this before. It helps me to weigh up and get an inner feeling of what is right for me, what I think is the most likely, what is something that I can sort of, I don't need to hang my hat on it actually. I don't need to really believe it. It's more it's not an emotional thing, but it is a feeling. It's that gut feeling where you think there's something visceral that you think, yeah, that's what floats my boat. That's what I really feel to be, there's the truth for me. And that's all you need, is there's the truth for you. And this is why we've, you know, it's no good getting into battles and wranglings over who, what, where, why, who's right, who's the most right, who knows the most. Oh yeah, it just, no. That's not where we're at. That's not where we're at. And I think just in the process of opening yourself up to all that is and exploring these sorts of things, be they myth, be they whatever, remembering that myth, there's always some seed of truth in myth. And yeah, it can only be whatever makes sense to you, because that's what lights you up. And if we're all lit up as individuals, each of us benefits, and the world and the cosmos benefits from us lighting up. There's one last book for a bit of fun. I found this in a charity shop, Finding Jesus. It's like Where's Wally, but you're finding Jesus. Oh, I nearly forgot the mushroom bit. Yeah, so there was this crazy idea that Jesus was a mushroom, and John Allegro wrote this book called The Sacred Mushroom and the Cross. And his arguments were about biblical passages being metaphors for the sacred mushroom. So John Allegro, he was a British philologist, and he was also actually a scholar of Dead Sea Scrolls. He wrote this book in 1970. He argued that basically his theories were that it was like a code, ancient code, and it was to do with a fertility cult. Now, I was actually watching something the other day which made me think of this, to add this into the video. Some scholar and scientist, oh, is he a scientist? Anyway, he was speaking about how some of the ancient, you know, like papyrus kind of texts, you know, like your Nag Hammadi sort of a codex kind of a thing, and there were psychedelic properties found on the thing. So yeah, maybe there's always been a bit of plant use going on in, well, I guess there has, but yeah, that's what it comes up with. There's certainly been Graham Hancock speaks about this, and I think it's him, and he's talking, I think he's looking at Egyptian wall paintings and the inclusion of, I think it's a lotus flower or something, and that is basically talking about, is it amitriptyline, something, DMT, yeah, anyway, that. So yeah, there's always been elements of it, and John is looking at a linguistic thing as well about Sumerian roots. It's again hidden references of words for mushroom and sexuality and fertility rites. So yeah, it's some very, now is it esoteric or exoteric? One of them. But yeah, there was obviously some cult, and this was their little offshoot. But I don't know if actually it directly related to Jesus, because what that's saying is that Jesus wasn't real, but it's come to be one of those stories, I think, where it's like, oh yeah, Jesus was a mushroom. When you start digging into it, yeah, the guy's probably done like a massive load of research and has some probably very valid academic points, perhaps. Thank you for watching this video. I hope my ramblings have brought you some little nugget of, you know, or the next piece of jigsaw on your pathway, and of understanding and knowledge and excitement and wonderings. do please take a second to press the like button and do subscribe. I'm like, you know, gathering new subscribers, so please do join us. We're a small happy crew exploring the world, mysticism, the cosmos, biblical stuff, historical stuff. Yeah, press subscribe to get more of this.